We are laboring here on Labor Day for
Yes.
your pleasure,
We are committed.
world. Wayne.com is where you're watching Inside the Zone. He's Justin Kenny of Optimum Performance Sports. Of course, we have a lot to talk about as we enter week 4. When we entered week 3, I felt like based on week 1 and week 2, we didn't really know that much yet. I feel after week 3, a lot of assumptions or a lot of our ideas about teams have been solidified. You feel the same way?
I feel like this is the earliest part of the season where we can really look at these teams and say we've seen enough of a sample size to really know what we have or don't have with the majority of these teams. But there still are a couple, namely Bishop Dwenger, that I feel like you look at them and say, I really don't know where they fit in the hierarchy of the SAC yet.
That's what I was wondering is what does it look like in the SAC in terms of rankings? Homestead at Bishop Dwenger is going to be our highlight zone game of the week. But before we touch on that game specifically, how do you see the SAC shaking out right now? And how would you kind of rank the top teams, the contenders that we've got right now in the SAC?
You put Bishop Luers and Bishop Dwenger up there because of their record, their unblemished record. I think you put Homestead up there. They were 14 seconds away from beating Bishop Luers. And you put Carroll up there as well because I think through week 1 we thought, well, maybe they're not that good. Now the preceding 2 weeks, we see what Bishop Luers is. We see what Carroll has done. I think Carroll is still in that conversation. So a little bit, still jumbled up at the top. I feel like we're all safe to say that Bishop Luers right now is the number 1 team in the SAC. But I think, you can make a case on who's 2, who's 3, who's 4, and so on.
I want to know, what about Snyder? What about the Panthers? Because they're one drive against Carroll away, and I know they're also a 48-yard field goal missing away from having another loss, but they're also one defensive stand away from being 3-0 and have beaten, Northside, and they've looked pretty good.
Right.
They have the offensive line. They have some playmakers. Dominic Moon on defense. We've talked about it. Where do you see them in the conversation? Because right now people are going, Luers, Dwenger, Homestead. Luers, Dwenger, Homestead. But Snyder's kind of lurking in the midst. And I'm not sure if that isn't what Kirk Tippmann likes with this
Exactly. And it's very un-Snyder-like. Usually they're always at the tip of our tongue when we're talking about SAC contenders, and it wasn't the case last year. Yet they've looked very good this year despite the 1 loss. Tyrese Brown has been tremendous. Over 600 yards rushing already through 3 games. He's averaging almost a first down per touch. And a lot of it goes to that offensive line, too. It's opened holes for Tyrese Brown. It's protected Luke Hoppert as well. Still some kinks in the armor of that defense, particularly on the back end. But as we saw last year, Snyder only gets better throughout the course of the season. And you have to feel that the way they're trending is if they can avoid that second loss, they're definitely in that conversation.
And how do you feel about the Carroll Chargers? Because, again, they lose on opening night by just a touchdown, a rather late touchdown to Bishop Luers. But you're talking about a team that's also, without their quarterback, earned a good win in week 2 against a good Snyder team. And then also last week, they got Jeff Becker back. I was at that game at Chambers Field. And, man, they put it on Northside 40-0.
That was a score that I don't think any of us expected. Not the fact that Carroll won, but the manner in which they did it. I think Carroll is still missing that marquee victory. And you could say that over the last couple of years. And I know Carroll's looking for that respect. And yes, they deserve a certain amount of that. But, they need to beat they need to beat a Homestead, right? I mean, they need to beat somebody that it makes a big impact in the SAC race where on Friday night we go, wow, Carroll did what? And I don't think we're there yet. And I know they want respect over there, and they're doing a good job at earning some of that. But, man, they need a big, big win over the next couple weeks, I feel, to really convince a lot of people.
Well, the big game in the SAC, we've already touched on it, is going to be Homestead at Bishop Dwenger this week. Homestead, as you mentioned, just a final possession away from earning a win against Bishop Luers, and of course Bishop Dwenger has rolled fairly handily at times this season, but hasn't been challenged perhaps as much as Homestead and Luers have at this point in terms of what their resume looks like. So, talk a little bit about what you can expect in this game. What do you see as the biggest difference at Shields Field on Friday night when these two go head-to-head?
Well, I think after what we saw last Friday night out of Bishop Dwenger, we have a question on how the quarterback position works. We saw Evan Springer start the first 2 games exclusively. They mixed in Bodie Dickerson on Friday and kind of split the snaps, split the passing attempts. Are they looking at going to a 2-quarterback system at Bishop Dwenger? Because Bodie Dickerson gives them a little bit more athleticism in that position in terms of getting out of the pocket and maybe creating some yardage with his legs. So are we looking at splitting time again on Friday? Does Jason Garrett want to make a switch to the junior Dickerson? Was it just a one-game thing? Fascinated to know what the situation is there because it could make a big difference against Homestead.
For Homestead, what do they learn from the Bishop Luers game? How do they apply it this one? I mean, it's big games back-to-back, but they are the back-to-back defending SAC champions.
Yeah, and, people are going to question the play call late in that game last Friday. You're up, 4? On third down in the red zone, you pass. It's intercepted by Evan Linker for Bishop Luers. They end up going down, scoring, and winning. Some people are going to say, even on the sidelines and sitting there, we're already questioning that even before the score. What are you doing? Kick the field goal. You're up 7, then to make Luers go the length of the field. But hindsight's undefeated. Coach Chad Zolman going for the dagger, so to speak. If you can go up 2 scores there, it's over. Peyton Slavin had been playing a tremendous game up to there, just made a mistake, ended up costing him. So Homestead's right there. Again, 14 seconds away from beating Bishop Luers, and then this whole conversation is completely different because we're talking a battle of undefeateds at Shields Field on Friday night. So Homestead still, has a lot to play for in the SAC. Obviously won this league a year ago with 1 loss. They can do it again this year. They played really good football. Lost Desmond Smith Jr. over the course of that game, which I think was a big hit because he scored all 3 of their first half touchdowns. So we'll see if he can come back for Homestead. I still like the Spartans' chances. I feel like despite their 1 loss, I like the way they look a little bit more than Bishop Dwenger, purely because we haven't seen the Saints take on and beat a really, really good team yet.
Yeah, that leads me to my point. What are you most looking forward to, and what's the big X factor in this game? Because you've touched on the quarterbacks for each side. To me, that's what it is.
Yeah.
Is Dwenger going to get settled on one QB, or, and we've seen Peyton Slavin, although he did play very well against Bishop Luers, this is going to be another big test when you talk about just the number of playmakers and the number of solid defensive players on that Bishop Dwenger side of the football.
I feel like the quarterbacks too, and then it starts up front as well for both of these teams. Homestead can really bring it in terms of offensive and defensive lines. They can rotate guys in. Bishop Dwenger, the same new faces up front for Bishop Dwenger this year. There's not a Luke Wigginton. There's not a Vinny Fiacable. No real true D1 caliber anchor up front. And they're going to be challenged as much as they have all season long thus far on Friday night. So how does that front line hold up on both sides of the football? Who wins the battle of the trenches? And I think that's going to dictate just how well the quarterbacks then are able to play.
In the Northeast state, I think the picture got a little bit clearer last week.
A little
bit. We talked about it at the beginning of the season, and we've talked about it in years past. Is there somebody that's going to challenge perhaps a Leo or an East Noble for a conference championship? And Norwell was that team that was in the mix last year. We wondered, based on the scores and the competition they had faced, and really graduation hit them pretty hard, although they have replaced some guys and done a nice job with that. But the Leo 41-7 win at Norwell last week really carved that conference up into its Leo and East Noble, depending on which order you like. Kind of in everybody else at this point. I know Brett Fox would like to say, hey, man, we're still pretty good. We scored 62 points. It's like the most points in a decade. But right now, outsiders looking in, I mean, we're already looking ahead to week 5 when East Noble will host Leo.
We felt like that was going to be the conference championship game de facto at the beginning of the season, and last Friday only reinforced that. We thought Norwell would be able to get a bigger fight than that. But look, if you face Leo and you cannot get any push up front against that really physical offensive line and you cannot stop that running game, then it's game over. But I feel like, once again, here we are with Leo, very one-dimensional. Jackson Barber, the quarterback, he runs 7 times last Friday. He has thrown 5 passes through the first 3 weeks of the season. Not completions, just 5 attempts through 3 weeks of the season. So it's working what Leo is doing. But as we saw against East Noble last year in the sectional, is eventually somebody's going to be able to defend that run and slow that down. And you're going to have to make plays in the passing game. And I feel like we're still there with Leo is, yes, they can win the Northeast 8. They can. They can, week 5, they can do enough against East Noble and win this conference. But you look through 4A, you look at that sectional 19 and beyond, they're going to have some challenges in there where they're going to have to pass the football. And that's kind of my worry with Leo, and I think we shared it last year, is, eventually you're going to take on somebody that's going to be able to limit that run.
We say that, but are they though? You got Livingston up front.
Yeah.
You've got DJ there as well. You've got Mason Sharon now back healthy this year. He's looking like a horse. You've got Ethan Crawford. You've got the Miller kid. Barber runs the offense well. It's experience. It's a well-oiled machine. Like we've seen, Northwood in the playoffs when all they do is run the football. We've seen teams exclusively run the football before. And Bart Curtis has had success wherever he's been, simply running the football. Like, can they do it so well that it doesn't matter that they aren't as effective in the passing game?
At some point over the course of the season, over a 14-game season, 15-game season, eventually you're going to have to make some plays vertically. It's going to happen. Can Leo do it? Maybe they can. But until I see it, that's going to be a question. And it may not be till week 5. It may not be till week 10. It may not be till week 15. But at some point, they're going to have to go vertical and make some plays in the passing game. And until that happens, I have a tough time putting them in a state caliber territory like we do Bishop Luers, like I feel like we can do with Adams Central, because they don't have that offensive balance. I think in the year 2021, you have to have offensive balance of some ability to be a true state championship contender.
I look at the schedule last year and I realized that Mooresville game for Leo was really helpful early in the season in just showing them what a high caliber team, a bigger school from outside the area looks like. And for East Noble, I think that's the Northwood game being canceled in week 2 was a killer, because that could have been that competitive team. Because now we've seen, Plymouth, they struggled against East Noble. Was that East Noble? Was that Plymouth? Probably a little bit of both. We saw, Plymouth had a lot of troubles against Warsaw. They shot themselves in the foot a couple times with some snaps and just didn't play the brand of football that we've seen from them in years past.
Very un-Plymouth-like for sure.
But I just, and also with Huntington North, we just, 57 points is awesome, but I feel like we're still, if we had that Northwood game, we'd know a little bit more what we've got in East Noble at this point.
And I feel like, we feel like we know a lot about these teams through 3 weeks, but Leo and East Noble, I think, both have some questions. East Noble only playing 2 games doesn't help, to your point, and missing that Northwood game. So maybe we do have some open questions heading into next week, because that's going to be the big showdown between those 2 teams. You look at Xander Brazel for East Noble, and that's a sophomore quarterback, as he prepared to face a defense the caliber of Leo on a big stage. So, I expect both teams to get wins this week to really set up that undefeated showdown. But even if we're here next week talking about it, we think we have questions on both of those programs.
Yeah, East Noble is kind of like the Dwenger of the Northeast State. Like they've played well, but we want to see them against some top-notch competition.
Yeah.
So New Haven is at Leo this week. East Noble's at DeKalb, Columbia City at Huntington North, Belmont at Norwell. Let's move to the ACAC now, where it is somewhat like the Northeast 8 in that we thought there were 2, maybe 3 teams at the beginning of the season, and it seems like it's going to be a 2-horse race, culminating in a Week 6 matchup between South Adams and Adams Central. That one will be at the Landing Strip. So tell me what you learned about Adams Central this past week, because we wondered how they'd fare against a good Park Heritage program. And, man, they answered the bell on Saturday with a 35-0 win.
They were able to respond to adversity from the week before. Coach Michael Mosier, as upset as I've ever seen him during and after that game against Eastside, because he felt that his team did not execute to the caliber that they're going to need to do to go deep in the 1A postseason. And I think, between Eastside and Park Heritage, they were able to address a lot of those things, because the lopsided affair of that game, I think, caught us all off guard. So Adams Central seems to be the team still in the ACAC for me. I know that South Adams still ranked number 1 in the AP poll, but I feel like Adams Central is that team. But as we saw last weekend or last Friday with South Adams, they lose Hayden Warner, and Trey Schock's not 100%. They lose Plattner up front, who's a huge part of both sides of the football. Yet Owen Warner steps in, and Mav Somerset steps up. I mean, it's the same names, but the siblings of these same kids, right, or the cousins of these same kids. So it seems like South Adams is always going to have these kids who are going to be able to step up, but does Adams Central have the experience advantage in this matchup in a couple weeks, and perhaps even the talent advantage coming up in a couple weeks?
What did you learn about South Adams when they played Bluffton? Because Owen Warner now, instead of just being thrown into the mix, had a week to prepare.
Yeah.
They had a week to prepare without Plattner. They had a week to get these guys in the game plan, getting reps with the ones. And then Lucas Hunt did a nice job at Bluffton. How concerning is that to have a dual threat quarterback like that? when you're going forward for Grant Mosier and facing a quarterback, perhaps of that caliber down the road.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think Ryan Black can be that kid for Adams Central, and that could be the challenge in a couple weeks for South Adams defensively. I think what we're seeing out of the Starfires this year is we knew that they weren't a one-and-done or two-and-done type team after the class graduated from the class of 2021, but we've seen other programs really fall significantly after they lose a key class. We saw Woodland do it after they got to the state championship game a couple years ago. We've seen Wayne do it. We've seen Northside do it in terms of just falling off. And, man, you lose that group. We're seeing Fairfield do it this year in terms of what happened last year to this year. Yet South Adams has staying power. And, yeah, they lost all that talent from a year ago. And, yeah, they even lost a couple of their starters this year that starred on that team a year ago. Yet they have replacements in the pipeline. They have young guys capable of stepping up. And it's all the more impressive when you're able to do that as a 1A program because you don't have the depth of the upper class teams.
Also, I want to say Heritage, don't overlook
How
Heritage.
about the Patriots?
I mean, South Adams faces Heritage this week down in Bern. Heritage scored 37 points last week. I thought that was a toss-up game against Woodland going in, and they laid it on pretty good with that run game. Don't overlook the Patriots. Casey Kolkman's going to have them ready to play.
Well, I don't know who Casey Kolkman made mad with the scheduling, but you start off with Eastside and Norwell.
Okay.
And then you get Woodland, which was a must-win because now you go at South Adams, at Adams Central the next 2 weeks.
Wow.
4 of the first 5 weeks are just brutal for Heritage.
Yikes.
So it was a key win for the Patriots to get that dub, if anything, for some positive vibes and positive momentum because the next 2 weeks are going to be difficult. But, yeah, we knew Heritage was going to take strides this year. And we know that Heritage is a better team than they were a year ago. They just have not had very many opportunities to showcase it because of that schedule.
In the NECC this week, Eastside of Churubusco is kind of the headliner. That will have a major impact in who wins the small school division. Central Noble is going to be in that mix, it appears, as well. But Eastside of Churubusco this week, I mean, Eastside just, every time we see them, they look like a juggernaut with Laban Davis running things. And you've mentioned Dax Holman. You've mentioned the number of guys over the weeks that have done great things for Todd Mason's team. I mean, this will be one of their biggest challenges of the regular season. How do you see this playing out in Busco on Friday?
I think we're hoping that this is a competitive football game.
Yeah.
So we're looking in the NECC and going, who can match up with Eastside at this point? And we're not seeing very many teams, at least on paper. We thought, okay, Fairfield, but Angola and, Garrett. But no, it's not looking like that. Churubusco with a great win on the road at previously undefeated Garrett last week. I think that's another score that surprised us all with the lopsided score of that one. If Churubusco is 100% health-wise, which it seems like they've gotten there after a couple weeks of struggles, then maybe they can hang around for a little bit. But, man, it's extremely difficult to match up with Eastside up front and in that on the edges, too. Very difficult. But Churubusco, I think Riley Burhoff is showcasing his abilities, mixing in some run a little bit with Burhoff, which I think adds another element. I think he had 3 rushing touchdowns last Friday. It was his first 3 rushing touchdowns of his career. And he's been starting since his freshman season.
Yeah, I was going to say, he's played a lot of football.
Yeah, so maybe that's another element that Churubusco can deal with and maybe have an added offensive weapon with a dual threat Riley Burhoff.
And I will say, I think probably the most wide open conference race in this area is the NECC Big Division.
Yeah.
And you've got some big games this week. You got Angola at West Noble and Garrett at Lakeland. Like, depending on how things shake out, those could be, all 4 of those teams could see themselves jockeying for, a position as far as the big division goes when it's all said and done, I think.
Yeah, I still like Garrett in that division, to be honest, despite last week. But, it's tough to look at Angola. Granted, the competition's been difficult the last couple weeks, but it's tough to look at Angola and say they're a favorite in the NECC Big School Division. So I think it's wide open at this point, and now we're going to actually start to get some of those divisional games that are really going to allow us to figure it out.
Final question, what are you most looking forward to about this week? We're talking week 4. We're quite a bit.
Moving right along, aren't we?
I mean, we're a month into the season in terms of games by the time we hit Friday night.
Yeah. All eyes will be on Shields Field this weekend, this Friday night. See just where Bishop Dwenger is. And we know what Homestead is after last week. And now I think we'll get an accurate read on just where Bishop Dwenger is. And then I think we give way to some big games the next couple weeks in the Northeast 8 and ACAC before I think we swing back around and close it out in the SAC to who wins this league. So week 4 will be a big one in the SAC. Next couple weeks, some other conferences shine.
All right. Love it, love it, love it. We're getting all over across Northeast Indiana over the next few weeks. It should be a good time. For Justin, he's going to enjoy the rest of the Labor Day.
Yes.
He's got wild plans, no doubt about it, on the schedule. I'll be here. For Justin, I'm Glenn. Thanks for watching on Wayne.com.